So, hello learners, welcome to the sixth week. So, I'll just share my screen and we'll start with today's session. Okay, so I hope this is visible to all of you, right? So, in the last week, we studied about water pollution, what are the types of water pollution, and what are the causes and effects of water pollution. So, today we'll start with we'll discuss some things about treatment of wastewater, right? So again, we'll first discuss the MCQ that was given to you as home assignment in the last fifth week session, and then we'll study some topics related to wastewater treatment. So the numerical which I gave you last week was you had to estimate the average chlorophyll A concentration in a North American lake during the summer season if the average spring total phosphorus is 0.108 mg per liter. So in this, I have during the session, I already provided you with the relation to calculate the chlorophyll A concentration if you have the uh, total phosphorus content, right? So you just had to calculate the chlorophyll A concentration based on that relation. So I'll just see if anybody has solved this numerical and if anybody has obtained the answer. So there are 6 participants today in the session. If anybody of you has attempted or even tried to attempt the last question, okay, so we have some answers. It's good to see that people are solving the home assignments and you are now at least responding, um, although in the sixth session, but that's fine. Okay, so we have two answers, which is C, right? Okay, so you have provided me with 0.003 mg per meter cube. Okay, so that is not the correct answer. Let us see if we have any other answer. Okay, only C. So we'll try to see what is the right way to solve this question. Okay, so I have already given you this relation in the last session. Okay, I have already provided you with this where chlorophyll is equal to 0.0731. Then we have total phosphorus raised to the power 1.449. Okay. So now I have already given you that total phosphorus is 0.108 mg per liter. Okay. So now you have to convert, first you have to convert this mg per liter into mg per meter cube. Because you see all are the options are either in gram per meter cube or mg per meter cube. So obviously you will have to convert this, okay, because in this relation there is no other there is no expression where any unit conversion will take place. So you have to convert this liter into meter cube. Then only you can achieve at any of these answers. So the only glitch or I will say only point in this question was unit conversion, right? Next was simple. You have to put the values in the provided relation and you'll get the answer. So you see when we convert mg per liter into mg per meter cube, that's a simple relation conversion, simple conversion and you will get 108 mg per meter cube. So now the total phosphorus will be 108 mg per meter cube, right? Then again you have to just simply put this 108 mg per meter cube here in the place of total phosphorus and you'll get the final answer is 64.6 mg per meter cube. So when the total phosphorus concentration in the lake will be 0.108 mg per liter, you will get the chlorophyll A concentration as 64.6 mg per meter cube. And just as a recap, we studied this chlorophyll A concentration and nutrient concentration of lake with respect to eutrophication, which was a consequence of water pollution, right? So the correct answer for this question will be option D, 64.6 mg per meter cube. So whenever we are solving any kind of numerical questions, we have to carefully consider the units, which are units for the values which are being provided in the question, and also the options which are provided to us, right? So we don't have to simply just put the values in the formula and obtain the answer. We also have to see the units and the whether conversion is required or not. So the correct answer for this question will be option D. Okay. So I hope this is clear to all of you. And if you have any doubt, post it in the chat box, then we'll try to understand it again. Now, again, this is just a brief recap of what we studied in the last session. So we studied about water related illness, water pollution. We saw that almost 80% of the diseases worldwide are waterborne. And this is the scenario at the global level and also at the Indian level. So because of consumption of polluted water, or because of consumption of water which is laden with different kind of pollutants, those pollutants can be chemicals or microbes which can cause disease. There are different types of waterborne diseases which are taking place. Okay. Then we studied what is actually contaminating the water, how the water bodies are getting polluted, and the main culprit is not only wastewater but also solid waste, right? Then we also studied about water pollution types, the point sources or the non-point source pollution, where we can identify the source from which the pollutants are coming or whether we cannot identify, and the pollutants are coming from a diverse range of or diffuse sources. Okay. Then again, we studied about the infectious agents that are a kind of water pollutant and the different diseases, right? Now, towards the end, we studied about the different causes of water pollution, like dumping of solid waste or wastewater, oil spills, or the religious activities that are being taken place in within the Indian subcontinent, right? Then the solid waste, and we also studied not this pollution of water bodies. It has led to lot of effects and consequences, like your eutrophication or biomagnification, death of aquatic life, and also mainly the scarcity of drinking water. Then we also discuss some of the real life examples, and we discuss these images which are showing wastewater pollution at different places. So we saw that we understood what is water pollution, then what are the contaminants or the pollutants which are actually polluting the water body, what are the causes and effects of that kind of water pollution, and some real life examples. Okay. So now we have, I hope everybody has clearly understood the breadth and depth of water pollution, not only in India but also across the globe. So, what is the solution? We have to treat the wastewater efficiently. Then only these kind of consequences and health effects can be reduced. And also, if we treat it efficiently, we'll get a treated water which will be safe for reuse. You can reuse it for drinking purposes if it is appropriately treated. You can reuse it for gardening purposes, in agriculture for irrigation purposes. You can reuse it for toilet or flushing purpose. You can also reuse the treated water for reclamation activities, like your swimming pools. So you can also reuse that treated water for that. But this reuse will be safe only when there is proper treatment. If the wastewater is not treated properly and you're reusing it directly, obviously that will lead to many kind of diseases. Okay. So that is why we study wastewater treatment. So what is wastewater treatment? It is basically a process which is used to remove contaminants from wastewater or sewage, and we convert it into an effluent which can be returned back to the environment, and it should be treated so that it does not have any impact on environment, or we can directly reuse it. So reusing is basically called as water reclamation. Okay, you are reclaiming the treated water and using it for your own purposes. Now, when we talk about wastewater treatment, there are different stages of wastewater treatment. Okay, so in today's lecture, I'll just tell you briefly about different wastewater treatment process, and we'll just go through some of the numerical aspects, right? Now, see, when we talk about wastewater treatment, you all must have heard that there are basically three or four stages of wastewater treatment. There is pre-treatment, which is also called as preliminary stage or a primary treatment stage. Then you have secondary treatment. Then we have, see, here is primary treatment, then secondary treatment, and we also have tertiary treatment. Okay. Now, when we talk about the process type, okay, so pre-treatment is a stage. For that particular stage, you can adopt A method, okay, or you can adopt method B. So there are different methods which you can adopt. Now these methods, they can be of different types. They can be biological, they can be chemical, they can be physical, okay. But the main stages are primary, secondary and tertiary. So we'll try to understand these stages and what actually happens during each of the treatment stage. Okay, so now first, what are the characteristics of wastewater? So this slide represents different characteristics, physical properties, chemical properties, or the biological properties, right? Now, when we talk about physical properties, so there is color, odor, and solids. Now, see, these properties will also depend upon the type of wastewater. Okay. For example, if you have sewage wastewater or sewage, so obviously it will have a different color and a different odor as compared to the wastewater which is coming from an industry. Let's say a textile industry. So when we talk about a textile industry, obviously the effluent from a textile industry, obviously the wastewater will be having a dark color. Okay, maybe because of dyes, the presence of dyes, then maybe the odor will be less. But if we talk about sewage, the odor will be very offensive and the color will also be dark. Or if some kind of treatment is taking place, maybe the color is less, but the odor will be very high, right? So now when we talk about color, mostly the color can be from domestic or industrial waste, or there could be natural decay of some organic materials. Odor basically comes when there is decomposition of the organic material taking place. So the decomposing wastewater will always have a very offensive odor. Wherever you see there are some open sewers or there are some open wastewater channels, and if there is some kind of decomposition taking place, it will emit out a very offensive odor. Now, why there are solids present? So there will be some solids present that could be from the domestic supply or it can be also from the industrial sectors. Temperature will always be because of some kind of the domestic or industrial waste. It can be from both the both kinds of waste. Now, when we talk about chemical constituents, so chemical constituents, they will be basically organic chemicals, inorganic chemicals, and there can be gases. So these characteristics are quite similar to what we studied regarding pollutants, right? Because obviously the pollutants which will be present in the wastewater, they will ultimately define the characteristics. So we already studied pollutants and its categories in the last session. So this will, reading this or understanding this will be easier for you. You can just simply relate it, right? So you see there are different kind of organic constituents. There can be carbohydrates or pesticides. So pesticides will obviously they'll come from agricultural fields. So when there will be runoff from the agricultural runoff, the pesticides can come. Then there can be surfactants. So surfactants are basically detergents. They'll basically come from industrial sectors or from the textile industries. Then there are different priority pollutants, proteins or phenols. So these will mostly come from the industrial sectors. Inorganic, so in inorganics we can have heavy metals or again nitrogen or the nitrates, they will again come from agricultural waste. So we studied about nitrates and nitrogen and phosphorus, which comes from agricultural runoff and which leads to eutrophication of water bodies. So obviously nitrogen and phosphorus will be a constituent of wastewater. Then there is sulfur. So sulfur can come from different types of sources. It can come from domestic, commercial, as well as industrial. When we talk about gases, mostly there are three gases: hydrogen sulfide, methane, and oxygen. So hydrogen sulfide is the main gas which is responsible for offensive odor of wastewater. So it is basically due to decomposition of the domestic waste. Then after physical and chemical characterization, you have biological constituents. So in biological, we just now discussed, like there are different infectious agents. So there could be bacteria, there could be viruses, so there can be different microorganisms. When we talk about different worms, or when we talk to a little larger scale apart from microorganisms, you can have different helminths. So they basically come from the domestic waste, right? So this is the major composition of wastewater, what the physical properties are, and what kind of physical, chemical and biological properties are, and what kind of wastewater will contribute to which property, right? So after characteristics, we come to the stages. So as we discussed, there are different stages. Now see, these stages can be in different textbooks or in different resources. You will get the classification in a different way. Some can have preliminary, primary, then advanced primary, secondary, tertiary, like this. But others will have just primary, secondary, tertiary. Then after tertiary, some will also give you a quaternary stage or an advanced stage. So there is different classification. But basically, there are three kinds of stages: primary, secondary, and tertiary. So you must have read this even from your school level. So there are basically three: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And mostly nowadays we also study about quaternary, right? Now these resources which I have taken, it is from a wastewater engineering book that is by Metcalf and Eddy. So it is openly available online, and it's a very good book if you want to understand anything related to wastewater treatment as well as the engineering aspect. What kinds of reactors are available, then how you calculate flow rates. So you can find all that information in that single book, right? So now coming back to the stages, we have different kinds like preliminary, primary, advanced primary, secondary, then tertiary, and finally the advanced stage. So you see, in preliminary stage, there is basically removal of coarse material or solid material. Okay, so which are larger material like rags, sticks, or floatables. Then, including this, there is also removal of grit and grease. Grit, grease, and sand. So these different kinds of materials, they are removed in the preliminary stage. Then primary stage, you have removal of suspended solids and organic matter. So usually both of these are included within the primary stage. Okay. So for example, here you see this is the primary treatment. And in the primary treatment, you have screens, then comminutors, grid chambers, and primary clarifier. So almost all the things are included within one single stage. So in the screens, there will be removal of large solid material like some cloth pieces or some floating materials. Then gradually the grit will be removed, and also sand and grease will be removed. After primary, you have the secondary stage. Like this is a secondary treatment. Now primary treatment is more or less common. There is there are very few techniques which are available, and those are mostly common. You will have a screen chamber, you will have a grit chamber, then a chamber for grease and sand removal. So mostly this is the treatment line which is followed in the primary stage. But when we talk about secondary stage, there are many options which are available. So there are different techniques. You have activated sludge process. Okay, then there is another process which is kind of a modification of activated, which is SBR. So you must have heard of it. Most of the treatment plants in India are now employing SBR, which is sequential batch reactor, right? After this, you have oxidation ponds in some places. Then you have trickling filters. So these are all kinds of trickling filters. So these are all kinds of different options which are available for the secondary stage. What happens in the secondary stage? There is removal of organic matter. That is a basic point. So all the after removal of the floatable material or the large material in the primary stage, the organic matter will be decomposed in the secondary stage by the microbial activity. So that is basically what happens in the secondary stage. You see in this figure, we have an aeration tank. So this is an ASP process. It is mostly the activated sludge process. You see, here is the activated sludge. So this ASP is the most common method which is used for secondary wastewater treatment. What happens is actually, first the wastewater coming is aerated. Okay, so why is it aerated? When the aeration takes place, the microbial activity gets enhanced. So after that, it goes to a secondary clarifier. In the secondary clarifier, all the biological material or the your microbes, they get settled down, which is called as a activated sludge. So now this sludge, it has a high microbial activity. So again, some part of this sludge is recycled back to the primary clarifier, no, sorry, to the aeration tank, so that the microbial, there is more activity in the aeration tank. So that is why this process is called as a activated sludge process. And then the remaining sludge from the secondary treatment as well as from the primary treatment, it goes to the sludge treatment unit. Okay, so this is basically what happens in an activated sludge process. After secondary treatment and along with your degradation of the organic material, biodegradation, the nitrogen, phosphorus, everything is removed in the mostly is removed in the secondary treatment. So your 75 to 80% BOD is reduced in the secondary stage. After secondary, we go to the tertiary stage. What happens in the tertiary treatment is there is removal of residual suspended solids. So if there are some suspended solids which are left after secondary, so they will be removed. And basically we have filters or micro screens in the tertiary treatment. So you have like disc filters which are there in the tertiary stage, and disinfection is also considered as a part of tertiary stage. So as I told you, different resources and textbooks, they give different classifications. So if you see this figure, this is a disinfection which is added, and it is said that tertiary treatment if required. So basically they don't consider this as a tertiary stage, but if we talk about Metcalfe and it is included in the tertiary stage. So basically, like more general, it is that disinfection is a part of tertiary stage. What is actually disinfection? You are using some kind of treatment to remove pathogens or disease causing microbes from the wastewater. So in the primary treatment, we remove all the large floatable material. In the secondary treatment, there is degradation of organic matter, your nitrogen, phosphorus, BOD, that will get reduced in this stage. Then in the tertiary stage, what is left is pathogens. So those pathogens or disease causing microbes like bacteria, viruses, they will be removed in the tertiary stage. So these are the basic three stages. After this, you will get a water which is free of nitrogen, phosphorus, pathogens, anything. Okay, so if these three stages, all the stages are employed in a plant and all are working efficiently, then you can get a treated water which is safe for recycling purposes. Now this disinfection is of different types. Usually we have chlorination or ultraviolet treatment. These are mostly employed. But what happens with chlorination is additional byproducts are formed which are harmful. And these products, they get remained in the treated water. So when the treated water is discharged to the environment or it is reused by humans, there are different kind of consequences or effects that are associated with consumption of such kind of byproducts. So chlorination is now not adopted everywhere. Now ultraviolet disinfection is applied. So during this COVID, you must have all heard about that UV box. So what is UV box? It is ultraviolet light. You are using UV light for killing of virus. Okay. So we use UVC lamps for disinfection purposes. Right. So I hope this is clear to you. What are the main stages of wastewater treatment and what actually happens in each of the treatment stage. So you see we have three figures here and four figures, and all are describing the treatment line in a particular kind of treatment technology. Okay. So for example, first is the treatment by the conventional biological treatment. So what happens is you have raw wastewater which goes to screening and communitors and grit removal. So this is your primary treatment. Okay. Then after that you have again a primary settler, then this this combines your secondary treatment. So secondary treatment is you're using an activated sludge process. Then in tertiary treatment, there is filtration, which is optional. Finally, disinfection, and we have the treated effluent. So these are the different treatment stages which are available in a conventional biological plant, which is based on an activated sludge process. So if this is not based on activated sludge process, suppose if it is based on trickling filter, so instead of this, you will have a trickling filter. Okay. Now in the second, there is nutrient removal. So mostly it is focused on nutrient removal. So what happens is the primary effluent from the first figure, which means after this section, so the primary treatment will go to an anaerobic and then an anoxic treatment stage and then aerobic. So this is called as anaerobic, anoxic, aerobic. So there are three different stages, and basically what happens is there is an enhanced nutrient removal as we go through the this kind of nutrient removal treatment regime, right? Similarly, the third figure here, it represents the advanced treatment following conventional or nutrient removal. So suppose if the treated water is recycled or it has to be reused for drinking purposes. So then you have to improve the treatment stages. You have to improve the number of treatment stages so that the water is free of any kind of pollutant, right? So what happens is after primary treatment and secondary treatment and tertiary treatment, you again add number of stages, right? Suppose you have membrane filtration, you have reverse osmosis, then you're again adding hydrogen peroxide, you're again going for advanced disinfection. So these kind of stages are added when your purified water is to be reused for suppose a drinking purpose. So you require high level of treatment. So depending upon your requirement, how the treated water is to be reused, the plants incorporate different kinds of stages and different kinds of technologies. Now suppose in the fourth figure you see there is anaerobic treatment of sludge. Now how the sludge is treated, there are different materials, there are different processes. Now suppose the activated sludge or the sludge from the primary and secondary, it is brought to this treatment plant, right? What happens is first the sludge is thickened and finally it is dewatered. After dewatering, you can take the sludge back to the, you can take it as, it is reused as biosolid for agricultural purposes, as a fertilizer. And during dewatering and thickening, the wastewater which comes or which is produced, it is usually recycled back to the original wastewater. So what happens is the wastewater which is coming, it is mixed with this raw wastewater and again treated throughout the plant. So this is a general process which is adopted in any kind of wastewater treatment plant. So again, this represents a different kind of technologies. So usually in preliminary, we have screening and communitors. Then in primary, there is sedimentation or flocculation. Secondary, there are different kind of treatment stages. So this preliminary, primary and tertiary and disinfection, this is more or less same, or there is less variety of the technologies available. In secondary, we have a lot of options like activated sludge process, trickling filter, then wastewater stabilization ponds, or the batch these granular reactors. So depending upon your requirement, the type of wastewater the plants, they employ different type of process, right? So I hope till now it is clear to you all the concepts behind the pollution of water and the treatment of wastewater. Like what are the stages of wastewater, what are the major pollutants, and which pollutants are removed during which stage. So now we'll discuss some of the numerical aspects. What is the hydraulic retention time? So hydraulic retention time is very crucial when we consider wastewater treatment plants, or when we want to design treatment units, or when we are doing R&D on such kind of treatment units development, right? So hydraulic retention time is the length of time a particle or a unit volume of water it remains in the reactor. So suppose you are designing a reactor, right? Suppose you are designing a reactor A and you want to pass wastewater through it. Okay, so you want to treat wastewater. Now you have to decide what will HRT do. It will decide for how much time the water will stay in this reactor. Okay, it is not possible that you are you are inputting the water and again it is getting treated within a minute and then you are withdrawing the treated water. So you have to decide through wait and trial methods or through established theories that what will be the HRT. So HRT will be the length of time a unit volume of water remains in the reactor. Now your HRT is defined as V by Q. So V is the volume of the reactor and Q is the flow rate. So you have to solve the simple example. If you are provided with a treatment unit which is 1.5 meter wide, 20 meter long and 2 meter deep, plus the flow rate is 0.5 meter cube per second. So what will be the HRT? Okay. So what is there? There is a treatment unit. This treatment unit is 1.5 meter wide. So you have the width as 1.5 meter. Okay. Suppose this is the width. So this is 1.5. The length is 20 meter. Okay. So length is 20. And then you have the depth which is 2 meter deep. Wastewater is coming in at a flow rate of 0.5 meter cube per second. So what will be the HRT? And I've already told you that the formula is volume by flow rate. So I'll give you 2 minutes to solve this numerical. It's a simple numerical. Just try to attempt it and answer the provide the answer in the chat box. So you have a treatment unit which is 1.5 meter wide, 20 meter long and 2 meter deep. What will be the flow rate? Okay, so I see some of you have responded that the screen is not visible. Is it visible now? Just respond in the chat box, right? Is it visible now? See, if this happens, you can even unmute yourself. Okay, so now can you just mention like from which slide the screen was not visible? Okay, so I'll have to check the chat box time and again. Just mention in the chat box from which point the screen was not visible. What was the last thing that was visible to you? Only stages. Okay, just a second. So was it this slide? Okay, so this was the last slide that was visible to you, right? So did you did this the entire discussion of this slide was visible? Just confirm so that I'll go through the content again. Okay, fine. So if this happens, I believe you can unmute yourself. Just unmute yourself and inform me, right? Because it's of no use if I'm just, you know, explaining and it is not visible or audible to you. Fine. So I believe the discussion till this part was clear to you. It was audible and it was visible, right? I'll just check once again if there is fine. Okay. So see, after this, we discussed. So now is this slide visible to you now? The technologies slide? It should be because you see the messages. Is it visible? Reply it in the chat box. This technology slide. This slide where there are 4 diagrams and there are different technologies which are available for wastewater treatment. Fine. Okay. So see this slide represents what is represented it. We first studied the different stages, right? So after this, there are 4 diagrams. These 4 diagrams are representing different treatment lines. Okay, and the kind of treatment or the treatment stages and the methods which are employed they depend upon your target, like what is why where the treated water will be reused. Fine. So the first figure here, it represents the conventional treatment which is used in most of the sewage treatment plants or municipal wastewater treatment plants. So this is a conventional biological treatment. Raw wastewater comes in, then you have screening and grid chambers and primary settling tanks. So this is basically your primary treatment. After primary treatment, there is conventional secondary treatment. So say activated sludge process, it is the conventional treatment process, also called as CAS. So you'll find it in most of the theories and textbooks. It is a conventional process that was employed for secondary treatment of wastewater. So again you see here we have the aerobic treatment and there is a secondary settler. The activated sludge is again returned here. Fine. So this is the conventional activated sludge process. After this you have tertiary treatment where filtration is employed and disinfection. So what happens is this is a conventional treatment plant and basically the wastewater goes through primary treatment, the activated sludge process, filtration and then disinfection. Now, if we want to enhance on nutrient removal, or if the wastewater is having high nutrient concentration, see the wastewater will always depend upon the source. When you talk about sewage wastewater, mainly your concern is decomposition of organic matter. When you talk about maybe a pharmaceutical wastewater, it will have a very high BOD and a very high COD as compared to the sewage wastewater. So depending upon your type of wastewater, you will have to add different wastewater treatment units. Fine. So suppose if the focus is on nutrient removal. So in this biological nutrient removal, again three different reactors or chambers will be added where there will be anaerobic treatment, anoxic treatment and aerobic treatment. So there is a different treatment line. Then again similarly, if suppose you want to reuse the treated water for drinking purpose, okay, or maybe for vegetable washing. So for such kind of purposes, you want to have a treated water which is of a very high quality. You cannot afford to have any kind of pollutant, any kind of chemical or any kind of pathogen present in the wastewater because you are directly consuming it. So that will have a lot of consequences. So what happens is even after tertiary treatment, you add different treatment process like membrane filtration, reverse osmosis, and advanced oxidation and disinfection for having a water which is very of a very high quality which you can reuse. Right. Now the last figure here, it represents the sludge. Now what happens to the sludge? See, when we talk about any kind of treatment plant, there are basically two byproducts. One is the treated effluent, another is the sludge. So we discussed that we get sludge from the primary treatment and as well as from the secondary treatment stage. So what happens is this sludge from both the treatment stages, it is thickened, a polymer is added here, which is basically polyacrylamide, and later dewatering takes place and your produced sludge, it is usually used as a biofertilizer. Okay, so it is good in enhancing the plant growth, and lot of R&D is there on how to efficiently utilize the biosolids which are produced from any kind of wastewater treatment plant, right? Now the wastewater which is produced during any of this stage, it is again recycled back to the raw wastewater. It is mixed with raw wastewater and again the process continues. Okay. So this basically represents your different treatment process lines depending upon your target or your aim. Fine. Now this flowchart here again represents the different treatment stages which are available. So for preliminary, you have screening and commutators, and in primary, sedimentation and flocculation. Different processes in secondary. In tertiary, membrane filtration, and in disinfection, UV disinfection and chlorination. Fine. So you see these processes are more or less common, but in secondary we have a lot of options. So these are just some. There are many technologies and many techniques which are available. You can have activated sludge process. Then we also have sequential batch reactors, which are modification of activated sludge process. Then trickling filters, aerated lagoons, See, what happens in SBRs is, now in this conventional treatment plant, or sorry, conventional activated sludge process, what happens is you have a separate aeration tank and then a separate clarifier. So in the clarifier, basically this sludge is removed from the treated water and the supernatant goes into the next stage, right? But in the sequential batch reactors, which are now mostly employed, so you see there are many government reports also. If you just Google it, the inventory for the sewage treatment plants, you will get a list of all the states, and they also represent how what technologies are employed in that particular state. Okay, so I'll try to add it in the next session to just give you an idea. So you will find that most of the treatment plants are now employing SBRs, because what happens in SBRs, there is only one tank for both of these process. Okay, so the capital expenditure in SBR is a little high, but the operational expenses are somewhat manageable. So most of the treatment plants across many different states, they are employing sequential batch reactors. So you have a single tank where aeration and clarification takes place. What happens is there are two parallel tanks. When one is in aeration phase, the other one is in the decanting phase. Decanting means the water is treated and the supernatant is going to the next stage. Okay. So this way it is easier to maintain. Okay. And also the space requirement is very less. So where you were having two reactors, you now only require one. Fine. You require only one tank. So that is why SBRs are now becoming more and more common. But again, there are some disadvantages associated. Like for aeration, lot of electricity is required. So there are different research which is going on that part as well. Fine. So now till this stage, we studied about wastewater treatment technology stages and the different technologies that can be applied. Now, when we talk about the treatment stage, one very important concept is hydraulic retention time. What is HRT is, it is the length of time a volume of water, unit volume of water or a particle remains in the reactor. So what I was discussing in the last few minutes was, suppose you are designing a reactor for, let's say, secondary wastewater treatment stage, right? Now this is the inflow of wastewater. So you'll have to decide what will be the time for which this wastewater will remain in the reactor and it will get treated. Okay, maybe let's say due to some microbial activity, or maybe you are adding some compound A and you want to treat it. So what will be the time it will remain, that we calculate it through HRT. Now the simple formula is V by Q, that is volume of the reactor divided by the flow rate. Fine. So this gives you the HRT, or the hydraulic retention time. Now there is a simple example. Just solve it right now and provide me with the answer. You have a treatment unit which is 1.5 meter wide. So it is 1.5 meter wide. Then it is 20-meter long and 2-meter deep. Plus the flow rate of the wastewater is 0.5 meter cube per second. So what will be the hydraulic retention time? So just calculate it. Attempt to solve this. It's a very simple numerical. And provide me the answer in the chat box. So you have a treatment unit which is 1.5 meter wide, 20-meter long and 2-meter deep. So all the dimensions are provided. The flow rate is provided. Just calculate the hydraulic retention time. Fine, we'll just see if anybody has answered. Okay, so still there is no answer. Try to solve it. It's a very simple numerical. I'll just give you another minute. See, all the dimensions are provided. The flow rate is provided. You have to calculate the HRT, which is simply V by Q. That is the volume of the reactor divided by the flow rate of the water, or the wastewater flow rate. Calculate the HRT and convert it into minutes. Let us see if anybody has answered. Okay, so still nobody is answering. Fine, we'll discuss it. See, the flow rate is provided as 0.5 meter cube per second, and the volume of the reactor is, you have all the dimensions, so you can just simply multiply the length, width and depth, and you'll get the volume, which is as 60 meter cube. Fine. So this is very simple. Just multiply the length, breadth and depth, and obviously you will get 60 meter cube as the volume. Then when you divide volume by flow rate, you will get the answer is 2 minutes. So it was a very straightforward numerical. I fail to understand why nobody has obtained the answer. So this is a simple straightforward question where you had to calculate the volume, all the dimensions are provided, and you just divide it by the flow rate, you will get the hydraulic retention time, which is 2 minutes. Fine. Now the next very important concept is food microorganism ratio. So food microorganism ratio, so as the name suggests, it is basically the available food divided by the microorganisms which are present. Fine. So as I told you, secondary treatment stage is mostly about biodegradation of organic matter. So as it says, biodegradation means microorganisms are degrading it. Organic matter means the food that is available. So the two main things are food and microbes. So that is why this concept or this parameter of F by M ratio is very important. It helps you to monitor how much waste, how much organic matter is there in the wastewater during the your secondary stage. So it is basically calculated by dividing the available food to the microorganism abundance in the reactor. Available food is the organic matter which is present. Microorganisms are the biomass which are maintained in the reactor. Now F by M ratio, so this can also be stated as organic loading per unit weight of microbial biomass. So this is just another way to state this ratio. So when we talk about available food, it means organic matter. When we talk about organic matter, so it means BOD, right? It means BOD or COD. So we discussed in the last session that BOD COD is basically a concentration of organic matter, how we relate it to the organic matter quantity. So organic available food is basically the organic loading in the wastewater, and then you have the microbial biomass which is present in the reactor. When you divide these two, we get F by M ratio. Now the microbial biomass is basically represented as MLVSS or MLSS. Fine. That is mixed liquor volatile suspended solid or mixed liquor suspended. So you don't have to go into that depth. Just understand that F by M ratio is food by microorganism ratio. Food is the organic matter. Microbes is the microbial biomass. Food or the organic matter can be stated as BOD and COD, and the microorganism is stated as MLVSS or MLSS. Then there is a simple interrelation between MLVSS to MLSS, that is 80% of MLSS. Fine. So there are just 2 points, the organic matter divided by the microbial biomass. That gives you F by M ratio. Now this is a simple example. If wastewater is having a BOD of 200 mg per liter and it is treated in a tank with 6 hours HRT, what will be the F by M ratio if the tank has 4000 mg per liter MLVSS, right? So everything is provided to you. Again, you have to just simply put it in the formula. BOD of 200 mg per liter is provided and there is a hydraulic retention time of 6 hours. Fine. After that, the MLVSS is 4000 mg per liter. So F by M ratio is available food by microorganisms. What is available food? Available food is BOD or your COD, and the volume will be kg per day. The unit will be kg per day. So kg per day divided by the microorganisms present, which is MLVSS or MLSS in kg. So it is written here that food will be BOD or COD in kg per day. Microbes is MLVSS or MLSS in kg. So just simply try to understand the above 4 lines and apply the concept in this formula. So it is very straightforward. Wastewater is provided with BOD of 200 mg per liter. 6 hours HRT is given and MLVSS is given as 4000 mg per liter. What will be the food to microbe ratio? So try to attempt it. We'll end the session at this numerical and rest of the part we'll cover it in the next session. Just try to give it a 1 minute thought and try to attempt the question. So you are provided with the microbial biomass which is there in the reactor. You are provided with the hydraulic retention time for the reactor and also the BOD of the wastewater. So how will you calculate the food to microorganism ratio? See, even if you are not able to, commit the answer, just you can even mention it in the chat box, like what are the steps till which you can attempt. Okay, so one student has written 120 mg. See, first point, your answer is correct or incorrect, that is secondary. But you see, food to microorganism is a ratio, right? How can it has a unit? So if you are obtaining an answer which is having a unit, that means there is some error in the calculation. Okay. Okay, so somebody has written point 3, but I really appreciate the student who has written 120 mg. Yeah, so I really appreciate that at least you are trying it and you are answering it. So that is a big thing. And coming to the answer part, correct or incorrect, that is secondary. Okay. So see, now the answer is 0.2 day inverse. One student answered 0.3. Okay, so that is quite close. But let's see how what is the correct calculation. So you see the food is already provided to US. What is the food is 200 mg per liter and the HRT is 6 hours, right? But you see the food has to be there in forms of kg per day. So what happen will be you'll have to convert this 200 mg per liter into kg per day. So what you will do it, you'll multiply this by 6 hours. You divide 6 hours, right? So you have 200 mg per liter and then you divide the HRT here. So obviously you will get it in the form of kg per day. You can convert this mg into kg and you have to again convert this hours into day. So you will get the entire thing into kg per day. Now after this, the microbial biomass is provided as 4000 mg per liter. So you just simply put it as 4000. Fine. So fine, you will not also you can just leave mg as it is. This mg per liter and this mg per liter, it will get cancelled. Convert hours into day and you will obtain it as 0.2 day inverse. So because rest of the units will get cancelled, you will get the answer as day inverse. Fine. So it will have a unit which will be day inverse. Just give it a second. So the food to microorganism ratio will be 0.2 day inverse. So when you try to solve it, it will come it as 0.2, right? So let's just go to the discussion part. Yeah, so where I mentioned that it will be unitless, so it will have a unit which will be day inverse, but that the answer of 120 mg, that will be incorrect. So you just try to solve it again and see whether you are obtaining this answer or not, right? Now we'll end the today's session at this food to microorganism ratio concept. And in the next session, we'll have another numerical on this F by M ratio. And then we also have different types of reactors that are present, some numerical part related to that. And there are some Q&A question and answers, right? So if you have any doubt, we'll discuss it in the next session. And you can again go through the session at the YouTube channel as well. So I'll suggest you try to attempt the next question, and obviously we'll discuss it in the next class, but try to attempt this question. where you already have sewage with a BOD of 220 mg per liter and the F by M ratio is provided. You have to calculate the microbial biomass that is to be maintained in the reactor, right? And then we'll try to solve it in the next session. So if there are no doubts, you can leave the session and I'll just end this meeting, right? So thank you for joining and we'll meet in the next week.